Good afternoon. I'm Kim King, Oil Now. You mentioned last week, sir, that if some of the companies from the first oil block auction are not able to find the partners and or the money to pay the fees, you may have to abandon the process.
Yes.
At what point do you decide that you've waited enough for those companies to do that?
We do have time on our side because it's not like we are under any rush to go to the second auction. If there was like a timeline set for the second auction, we had to bring this to a close by a particular time. So we're still working with the companies. Who knows, maybe they may be able to raise the financing. And so that is one of the reasons. And the second reason is the move to do 3D seismic. The third thing is that there's a meeting slated with CGX for Friday of this week, at which we will have a discussion with them, and then a cabinet paper will be presented to determine how we deal with that matter.
Okay, with respect to the plan to conduct seismic, have you identified any additional areas for potential action, aside from the lack of seismic, that could improve the attractiveness of the next auction?
Well, there have been a call to reduce that. Our fiscal conditions are very high, onerous. We don't share that view. We don't share that view that the 10% royalty is unreasonable, and a 10% tax, especially in a country now that is not a frontier country any longer. You're going to be producing 1.3 million barrels a day soon. So we're getting to be like a fairly mature jurisdiction. And so we doubt that we are going to change the fiscal conditions, but we are prepared to be a bit more flexible on some of the other positions that we put in place. For example, in the past, if you get a block and you don't do anything, there is no consequence to it for that. You can just hand it out, hold it for 4 or 5 years, and then hand it back. Now you have to put up a development plan. So your development plan to do the wells may be $400 million US. If you don't do anything, the fine is $200 million US for holding the block, and that's part of what we have now. So people are complaining it might be a bit too onerous, and we may be a bit more flexible on those sorts of conditions.
And what timeline are you looking at for a potential second auction?
Well, now that we're going on the route of the seismic, we'd have to talk to our international advisors. They know what's going on in the field of auctions globally. The time when we had put out our expressions of the auction, you had 80 other countries in the same process at the same time. So we are competing with 80 other countries globally for petroleum money or dollars to invest. So our advisors should guide us on this with knowledge of the international market. Should they say that we believe that there's a reasonable chance that without the 3D seismic, you may be able to get some good bids in, then we may set an earlier date before the completion of the work that we expect the companies to do on 3D seismic.
Finally, did you say, with respect to the perceived conflict of interest with respect to Mr. Nigel Hughes, that the government would consider some sort of investigation into that?
It could very well lead to that. Could very well lead to that. That's all I'm saying at this time. Could very well lead to that.
Hi, good afternoon, Dr. Jagdeo. Sharon Belger of Kiteshare News. Dr. Jagdeo, Exxon Financial showed that Guyana was charged for exploration during the COVID-19 period. Although the company claimed in its work program was affected by the COVID-19 pandemic and applied for an additional year to relinquish the blocks in the Starboard Block. Can you explain what happened there?
But you are aware we went through this issue at great length. So, President Granger, in I think August of 2020, just before he left, he gave an extension. That document said that they were supposed to submit, so you'll get the extension, but submit documents to us. So it happened before we assumed office. We then asked them to submit the original exploration plan and how it was affected. And they proved to the satisfaction of the ministry that there was a departure from the original exploration plan. They did do some exploration, but it was a more aggressive exploration plan. There was a departure. And that is why the extension was given. But it was not given, it was given before, but we concurred with it. That's why we did not make an issue.
The financial also showed that millions were deducted last year for decommissioning. Can you explain why Exxon is being allowed to deduct monies for decommissioning from projects that is not yet started, that is not producing oil at the moment? Is this part of the agreement, or?
I don't know what you're saying. From which project they have not deducted for decommissioning?
No, they have deducted from projects that is not yet started. They start taking out money for decommissioning from projects that is yet to start up, to start producing oil.
For decommissioning?
Yeah.
And you are saying to me you checked that and that's accurate? Are you saying that you checked that?
Well, so far that's what we seem being reflected in the final.
No, not seem. You're checking. You're asking me a question, and I'm asking you. You check that to be accurate.
Yeah, so far.
So far.
That's why I'm asking to set some clarity.
I'm not going to comment on it because I think it's not accurate. And but if the project hasn't started as yet, my assumption is that you can't deduct from it for decommissioning if it hasn't been even commissioned as yet. If you have not commissioned a project, you should not deduct from decommissioning. But I don't trust your kind of thing. Okay. I'm just saying that I don't trust it. That is why I'm saying that if you don't commission, you can't decommission. And but let me deal with that. And by the way, so let me go through this again. Remember, you keep mentioning this stuff about, say, how Exxon has reported their profits here locally. So, for example, last year, right, 2023, $11 billion of sale revenue, right? So, under the international financial reporting standards, they have a particular way that they have to report it. So I said to you guys, let's get the numbers, because I explained to you the principle, why it is different using the international financial reporting standard versus accounting for the provisions of the PSA. So under the IFRS, $11 billion of sale, less $1.6 billion of operating expenses, minus $1.8 billion of depreciating expenses, minus $1.5 billion of tax expenses. Because under that, although they don't pay the taxes, they have to report it under the International Financial Reporting Standard. So it's $6 billion of reported net income. So if you go on the other side now, it's same $11 billion of sale revenue. But what is 75% of $11 billion? It's 8.4 billion goes to cost recovery. So the government of Guyana, of the 25% remaining, the government of Guyana gets 1.7 billion and Exxon gets 1.3 billion. Right? Because that includes our 2% royalty, 50-50 plus 2. So when you account under the petroleum agreement, PSA, this is how it works out. When you report based on the International Financial Reporting Standard, which is what they have to do here, then it shows a different level of net income. Right? And that is the difference there. So which we had explained theoretically, but I've asked them to put together the numbers, how much actually. So give an example of it so that people understand it better.
And finally, there's something circulating that the permanent secretary of the Human Service and Social Security Ministry resigned with immediate effect because of an alleged corruption. Is there any truth to this, or is just a allegation?
I don't know if there's a resignation there, but people move all the time. I think people are moving around, but I don't know if it's there was a resignation. First time I'm hearing about this, that there was a resignation.
Dr. Jagdeo, is your government satisfied with the progress of the ongoing 6 regional hospitals across the country?
On the 6, I think they told me that the last report I had, which was about 2 or 3 months ago, that 3 were on track to be completed by year end, and then the others would go into next year. So I think we'd have to examine it, but they would be completed in maybe the first quarter or so next year. I don't remember when exactly they should have ended. I think it may be end 2024, might be end 2024. But I told you at a previous press conference that we're already looking to how we staff these hospitals, because we can't just complete the hospitals. We have to now get people to run these hospitals. And therefore, that's a big challenge now, and we may have to recruit people from abroad apart from training our own people. And that's why we keep saying as many people who want to go into train in the medical field, we will, like nurses, nursing aides and stuff like that, we'll pay for them to be trained too.
Secondly, has the government received the reports regarding the inspection of all security companies providing service for the government?
No, I asked Ashni Singh up to a couple of days ago. He has not received it as yet, because he has directed that has be done. But as I made it clear, any security company that's not paying the NIS for their staff, they have a habit of doing this. They have large numbers of people, they have a habit of doing this. Deducting the people's money and keeping the money. Sometimes they have to pay a share of it too. They don't pay their share, and then they keep working for government. That's not going to happen. If they're not complying with that rule, they're going to see their contracts terminated.
President Ali mentioned at his press conference that government has commenced commercial discussions with airline operators. Do you care to share with who these players may be?
I'm not aware of that and what's the nature of the discussion in airline operators. If they made a request of the government, but I know that there are a few companies that have gotten the approval from civil aviation to start new airlines and new routes to Guyana.
Clarify.
Huh?
Let me clarify.
Okay.
So commence commercial discussions with airline operators since Guyana received its carbon credit certification.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's
sorry,
a totally different
I
matter. That's
didn't-
what I was wondering about. But yes, so you know, our air now, we're eligible. There are So our carbon, we've been fighting to get our carbon sold into a compliance market. We've been fighting through the UNFCCC process for them to add forest carbon to a compliance market. It's been a long fight, and they are rejecting it throughout. Not UNFCCC, but some NGOs and others. I pointed out that many countries, tropical countries, suffer because of this. I pointed out also that in Guyana's case, we have 1% of global tropical forests, but we're already earning more than, or we're on track if we extrapolate from our market-based foreign carbon to earn more from the market than the 99% of the other forests that they will get from public funds. 1% of our forests can earn more through the market than the 99% of remaining tropical forests will get through public funds. So it's a successful model. So we didn't wait on the compliance market to move forward and to get our credit certified. We started exploring that. So what we've done now, we got their one compliance market. Although there's no UNFCCC compliance market, that there's one in the world that uses the forest carbon in they allow trading. It's a Singapore-based market, and it is for airlines. And therefore, we've started the discussions to see whether we can sell our certified carbon to some of the airlines. You know, so the prices hopefully will be higher. But this, the UNFCCC is treating, and the negotiations there, the countries, the tropical countries badly. If we didn't branch out on our own a long time back, since 2009, set up our own LCDS, then we got a $250 million deal with Norway, then the 750 million with Hess. We would be like some other countries. Look at Suriname. Suriname, probably in the whole period, in the last 14 years, when we're talking about $1 billion, I doubt if they got $20 million. And so many others, because they're waiting on these other markets. We had to branch out on our own. And this is something we don't get credit for.
Good afternoon, Dr. Jagdeo and As Williams, Skytree News. Dr. Jagdeo, you mentioned that currently Exxon is basically sharing their screen, which has real-time monitoring, and there are 3 government agencies that currently has access to the production data. Keeping this in mind, does the government still have plans at some point to procure independent meters?
Yes. I said yes. We still will do that separately. We will do that separately. But right now, there is this impression that we don't get any data. We don't do any monitoring. So you do have people from the Bureau of Standards on board the vessel, and also from GRA on board the vessel. And they look at the meters, the calibration of meters, all of these things, to look at the flow of the oil and the produced water. So, and then onshore, well, all of this information comes to Exxon, and it's updated every 10 minutes for produced water, gas, all of that stuff, oil, everything, how they see the production real time. And even data from the drilling, the wells and stuff like that. So this comes on the screen. So we have access to that dashboard too. 3 agencies, so we can also track what's going on offshore. But but we plan to do our own thing independently later too. So I doubt it's going to change much what we see, but still we'd have the comfort. And it does not have to be huge. I was in Ghana, and I went one the evening to go to see how they're monitoring the gas. And so there's a modest building, like smaller than up here, smaller than this. And you had about 10 screens and individuals at that, and that's all they do. And so it does not have to be a massive operation, and we can get it done soon.
Secondly, with oil production revenues expected to rise appreciably in coming years, do you envisage that one day Ghana will be the ATM of the Caribbean, and are there any long-term plans to make Ghana the financial capital for the region?
ATM, it means that like people can draw our money anytime. No, we're not going to be ATM for anyone. It's like, it's disparaging of the Caribbean people to think too that they would see us as an ATM. You know, I think we have to ensure that our own people are prosperous. First, here in Guyana, wherever they live, in the most remote parts of the country, every Guyanese. That's the first order of business. And it will grow over the years. It's not going to happen overnight. Some people believe that because we started producing oil, that overnight we're going to be able to solve all of the tasks. I keep reminding them, like Nigel Hughes said, in this time of plenty, we must do more, right? We must get a law to give out all of this money. Does this guy know that of the budget, the $1.1 trillion budget that we have, less than 30% is funded from all the oil money that we get for last year? Almost oil money, and less than 30% of the budget. Where do you think the 70% of the other budget is funded from? More than non-oil revenue funds a greater share of the budget than oil revenue. But it's impossible to have a conversation of that nature with a Norton or a Nigel Hughes, because they're just anecdotal. Oh, share out all the oil money. Never mind, it's just 30% of our budget. And 90 billion already from 2020 to now has gone into increase in public sector wages of the 300 billion that we got in the budget. So it's impossible. So as we grow wealthier, our people across this country must benefit. High education standards, high health standards, global standards. They must have safety in their home. We're investing a lot in safety from criminal activities, etc. They must have leisure. They must have good paying jobs. And they must have more opportunities to grow wealthy. That's our people. Wherever they live, whoever they vote for, whatever their race, men, women, our people. We also have to provide opportunities for people who fled this country. A lot of our people, our own people, fled Guyana. And they're going to come back, and they're our kith and kin, if you want to call them. These are our people. Wherever they fled to, from the Caribbean or North America or wherever, they have to come back home, and they have to enjoy this prosperity in the future years. But we have to manage this well. We can't splurge now when we don't have money as yet, but later it's going to get better. That's it. And then we have to be generous to people in our region too, and people who suffer calamities around the world. Like you recall when Haiti had the earthquake. I gave Haiti at that time, we didn't have money, $1 million US. And we paid it directly to the Haitian government. And then when the UN report came out, We are number one in the world in terms of donor, because based on our per capita, our GDP. We give Haiti in proportion to our GDP more than any country in the world at that time. And we didn't have oil money at that time when they had an earthquake in Haiti. When people face disasters, when we had our 2005 flood, we have people who sent stuff for us from the Caribbean, Trinidad and Tobago sent pumps and all of that here for our people. So we got to keep an open mind to the people from our region too, and help. But I don't think they're looking at Guyana as the ATM. They're not gonna, and we're not gonna be the ATM for anyone. So I hope that doesn't come across that the Caribbean people are looking to Guyana this way. I think they're not. They just want to, and they should be able to invest here and share some of the prosperity too. So that's how I see it evolving in the future as we go forward.
The government to meet future electricity demands in the gas energy project and also the Amila Falls hydroelectric project. Given the amount of electricity that's going to be generated from these two projects, can you say how confident is the government in GPL's grid to be able to handle this additional generation in a reliable manner?
That's a great question, because we've been addressing this. So you recall I said that there are 5 elements to the current project: the pipeline, the NGL facility, the power plant, the transmission from the power plant to the control center, and the control center. And combined, that's over $2 billion. The transmission alone from the power plant to take power back to Reed and Hoop and to be distributed along in Region 3, and then to bring the power across the river to the control center here by Eccles, which will dispatch it to the rest of the country. That is one element of this project, and all 5 are going on simultaneously now. They're being built now. Secondly, we're looking at upgrading a link, and I think Cummins Electrical has won that, a link from the Kingston power plant to Sophia, the substation at Sophia, so that we can bring more power in there, should we maybe across the river from that link, so we have a circle, so that makes the grid more reliable. If you have it goes in a single direction and anything happens on the grid, you then have outages. But if you have a circular grid, you can bring the power around this way. So we're probably crossing the Reed and Hoop into Kingston and then to the Sophia substation. But we're just upgrading right now the part from Kingston to Sophia. We've gone out to tender for over $200 million of work to upgrade transmission and distribution now, before the power comes in, to stabilize our system more, because we're generating more, but the old grid, we have an old grid, because a lot of these old transformers, old lines and stuff like that. So another $200 million has been tendered and is out. So that's another element of the project that's going to be implemented over the next 6-8 months. Then we're looking at a transmission main now going from maybe Garden of Eden all the way to Linden, because right now we're buying power from Bosai at a very expensive rate and we're subsidizing it to the community. So we need to take some of this power up to Linden. And once that is built, we will then build some substations along the highway so we can distribute. You're going to have a lot of housing development along the highway, so we can distribute power there. We're also putting in some solar units around the country, 35 megawatts of solar power, We're talking to a company to take our gas, to take it to transfer it to power plants in Essecubo, in Bartica, in Lethem, that are not connected to the grid, so that they too can enjoy power generated from gas, and then the same rate that people pay elsewhere, which is like half of what they're paying now. So all of this is part of the plan. We have a comprehensive plan to upgrade transmission and distribution along with the generating capacity. So you're right that we have to focus on it. Sometimes it's a bit it's overloading the system, because even when you have more power and you're running it through these old lines or old transformers, you get localized faults all the time. People get blackout in the area. So we are upgrading the whole system, and these would be smart grids. So on the line itself, you have a fiber optic cable that will be connected to the control center. So you don't need to know a report when a blackout takes place anywhere else. Real time, you can know from the control center here at Eccles, wherever in the country, or in the interconnected grid, you have a power outage, and dispatch people immediately. And you can also remotely shut off some areas. So this is what the control center will grow into, that sort of thing, a modern grid. It's taken a lot of work, but it will get there soon, hopefully.
Thank you, sir. And permit me one quick follow-up to one of my previous questions. The meters. Can you say when government is looking to go out to tender to acquire these?
To what?
The meters. Can you say when government is looking to go out to
meters?
tender? To when you have your own system to monitor the production?
Oh, no, but it's not just meters. It's a comprehensive system. Right now, we calibrate the meters. Bureau of Standard calibrates the meter. That's part of the license. They have to submit the meters to us to be calibrated, and then they monitor the reading on the meters. So if we calibrate the meters, the existing meters, that means we're verifying that the meters can't be tampered with and everything else, and then they are doing the readings from the meters, and we have people from Bureau of Standard on the FPSOs themselves. So it's not just one thing, right? This overall monitoring, the independent monitoring, is not just about meters, because they do have a great fix on these meters. I know there's a fixation at Kaichor about the meters. Glenn Lal talk about these meters all the time. Yeah, but we do have the calibration.
Jagdeo, you mentioned that 50,000 jobs have been created since
Actually,
20.
more. I'm conservative.
Okay, over 50,000. Can you say how many may have been created for individuals in the hinterland? I know about the CSO program.
Yes.
Only.
So we have under the part-time job program. So about that in the hinterland, we have close to 3,000 CSO, 2,700 or 2,800, and we have probably another 3,000 part-time workers. This is leaving out people who are working on government contracts and a whole range of other activities. So you're talking about maybe 6,000 people, minimum 6,000, which is substantial. I mean, in the hinterland with the smaller population, that's a substantial number of people who are here.
Contracts from the government.
Yes, on the contracts, a lot more are working. Remember, we're spending on a single road in the Region 1. More money now than what APNU probably spent in the 5 years. Say in Mabruma settlement. The Mabruma settlement, we're doing about 3 kilometers of concrete road through the whole settlement. That's going to cost it's about $1 million or so per kilometer. So you're talking about $3 million alone in that area. That's $600 million here. In a whole year, the regional budget for hinterland in the Apnu is less than $600 million. So I'm not just talking about Mabaruma settlement. Then we're building, for example, a road going in to Guyana, past Hosoror, going in there. We're concrete road. We've started from Moruca going up to Quibana. These are the big roads that we're doing. Then the internal roads, a lot. That's only in Region 1. If you go to Region 9, you would see the similar thing, but we've also started building concrete and asphaltic roads in the big villages themselves. So a lot of work is being done and local people are working. So these are on government contracts. But because of the heightened level of economic activity, Region 1 was practically all of when I went there to campaign, I went to Mabaruma, then to Port Kaituma. And everybody was complaining that APNU had put in place the collection of taxes. And now, we were not collecting taxes in those areas from imports that came from Venezuela and Brazil, in Region 9 too, from Brazil, because of the high cost of living and the border area. We said, if you don't bring the goods past the Pomeroon or Kurupukari, then we allow that kind of status. The GRA would not really go after you. It's not in our law, but I shouldn't be saying this, but I think next Kaicho News will go after it, but it was a policy decision. Kaicho News will go after that. Jagdeo justifies illegality. But the people in those regions benefited. Soon as they got into office, they put up customs outposts, everything started. The water came in from the area, they got to pay $500 a case. The soft drink came in, they had to pay for that, everything. Pushed up not just cost of living, but also killed economic activities. We removed that back when we got into office. We said no. And we've seen a flourishing once again of business-related activities. So that means more jobs for people in these areas. So this sort of, they don't talk about those kinds of things, but those were devastating to people who live in the hinterland. For example, putting the VAT on airline ticket and freight into the hinterland. Imagine you're flying into the hinterland, you got to pay a VAT on your ticket, and then if you're posting goods into the hinterland, you have to pay VAT on the freight for the airline. People don't remember these things, and therefore they get away with, oh, I love you again. All right, thank you very much.